Your company may be one retirement away from losing 20 years of judgment that no manual ever captured. And Dr. Bruce Dorey is here to help us solve this problem. He is the founder of Jes-AI and the author of Lift, and he uses AI to preserve the stories, decisions, and hard-won expertise that businesses quietly depend on. We're here at the Marketer of the Day podcast with Robert Plank. We're brought to you by dfypodcast.com, where we handle the editing, publishing, and promotion so you can focus on the interview. And today's interview that we're focusing on is how to use AI to capture an expert's knowledge and to get from stories like, well, here's this one weird thing that happened on the job 12 years ago into something that perhaps an employee can use during a crisis. So using AI in the proper way. So Mr. Dr. Bruce Dorey, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm fabulous. It's always, I sometimes dread discussing AI because I'm just like, it's taken over all our lives.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the same old stuff, but every conversation I have, it excites me in a weird way that I haven't felt in like 10 or 20 years. It's an amazing time to be alive.
Yeah, and I think you're going to, what I talk about and what I think is important isn't the AI and the new, so much the AI. It's just how AI makes something really human that we've developed over, in our evolution, possible right now. And can I just tell you what I'm thinking about when I say that?
Go for it. Tell me.
Well, the new book is called Digital Bell. So I've written 3 books, and this is the 4th. And the idea of the digital bell is that most of us walk around, and myself included, walk around in kind of an autopilot, total autopilot. And the only thing that brings us out of autopilot is social media for the most part, and email. But that is primarily reactionary. You respond to this comes at you. And the idea of the digital bell came from, I lived in the Middle East for almost 20 years, various parts of the Middle East. And this isn't about any kind of religious thing. This is just about 5 times a day, they had a call to prayer. And 5 times a day, we would be in the middle of meetings and we'd get interrupted, and I'd see these guys, men and women, go away. We'd all be tired and exhausted, and usually a lot of us were jet lagged. And then they come back and they were enlivened. They were like in a different place. And I started to wonder about that. And the idea is that, as we evolved, there was tools that brought us back from the automatic aspect of just day-to-day automaticity, walking around in a sleepwalk kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It does. And there's value in changing the channel, taking a break, resetting a little bit. And I think I can relate to sometimes having like, oh, I've got this meeting in 5 minutes and I'll squeeze in this little bit of work here. I'll do the meeting. And right after I'll squeeze this little bit. And it's no fun, is it? It's a surefire way to get yourself exhausted. And sometimes we need like that little break to wake us up. So just to make sure that you get me all the way there. So there's the digital bell. And so how does this idea of like the 5 times a day break, how does that relate to AI in the future and what we're experiencing?
Yeah. So the bell was something, if we take it, back to this country, the bell was rung generally at the time of come into the church and do your thing, the idea that I use now is that you can, and we can set up specific, and again, sort of back to that, the idea is that you get called into something that you're committed to, something you design, not a social media post, something that, in the old days, it was kind of like, I am committed to living a good life, and the church gives me that. I'm not by any means talking about religion here. I'm talking about just breaking the day-to-day drift. And so with AI, what I do and what I recommend is that you figure out what's really important. You kind of get your focused. Here's what's really important to me, and you remind yourself of that over every day. At a certain time. I do it on a certain time every day. So I do it before I work out. I have a light workout in the morning, a 10-minute workout in the morning, and then I have exercise in the afternoon. And I kind of refresh something that's really important to me. Because what happens is you read a book and there's an insight, and that insight like fires you up for a day maybe, but then it fades into the background. And what I think and what I recommend is that you start capturing these insights. And that's kind of the idea of capturing this tribal knowledge and the knowledge from your company. And then you remind yourself and you remind your team, and the team reminds itself of what's important on a daily basis. You're not pushing it on them, but it's an individual thing that, okay, every day, at 2:00, I'm going to review this quote that I really like. And it brings you back to something that you want rather than just the day-to-day flow. I hope that's communicating.
Yeah, it is, and that's powerful, the refresh. And you think about all of these success habits that are interrelated, like writing a to-do list, writing down your goals, refocusing, and then that term drift, it's really an AI term, isn't it? It's really, we've experienced that where if you have like a chat window and you just keep adding to it, working on it, and keep repeating things, then it ends up being like drifted into like this really weird thing. And sometimes you have to just close down the chat and open a new one. And then if you're not careful, you drift through life too, don't you? Like you end up in
Yeah.
a situationship, or you drift off into this other town or this other job. And it's just like the world kind of pushes you around unless you refocus and say, hey, here's what I really want. And am I making this decision out of comfort, or because it's the path of least resistance? Or do I have this goal, and will I sometimes have some both comfortable and uncomfortable actions to go from point A to point B? And so it's a fascinating concept. And so as the way it relates to Jes-AI and the way that we can like systematize, like what's this all about? Because like you this is like a really cool application of AI, isn't it? To take the big mess and all the conversations and all the big mountains and words and kind of make it more structured. So how does this help businesses?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. Because what AI is really brilliant at doing is identifying patterns. So you, what I do is I ask it to monitor and transcribe a meeting, and then say, "Am I being true?" I don't say this in like I say this once, and I say, "Hey, listen, when you review um, my transcripts today I have 3 meetings. Please review them and tell me if I'm being true to what I say I'm really committed to, which is being, forthright." Well, one of the things is in meetings, I tend to shut down if it's not going my way. I kind of just don't say anything. And I'm the CEO of the company. So it's kind of like hard, not even, but I'm talking about with customers or with vendors or that kind of thing. And I find that, by reminding myself after the meeting. So point is, AI will come back and say, "Hey, Bruce, the 2 meetings you had today, you didn't do a good job. You sat back, you were, so next time in these meetings, here are the 3 things you want to think about. You want to think about, saying what you really believe is important, or something, along those lines, so that you can learn." AI is kind of like, and the idea of what we do in the company with our company is it's kind of like the smartest guy in your office sitting with you and telling you what to do, or what has worked in the past. And it's kind of the idea of the tribal knowledge is what's worked in the past is this, and you didn't do that today. When you come to this meeting this afternoon, here are the 3 things you want to think about, because this is what works.
Well, nice. And I wish that I feel mad that didn't think of the idea of some of those note takers, right? And I've been using them
Yeah,
more and more often as well for myself, like as like an assistant or a coach, right? Because
yeah,
I do want to stay like consistent, not in a boring way, but with like a high level of like using my values, right? And so like
yeah,
because we have like all these Zoom meetings and they get sometimes transcribed, like I'll use these in some of the ways that you're describing. I'll like say like, well, I've done, 10 of this type of meeting and I'm going into number 11 and like how have I been doing lately? What should I keep in mind? And then even afterwards using it as my assistant or my coach or something and saying something similar like because all these note takers, right? They show you these percentages. They say
yeah,
how active were you, or what was the excitement level, and it's like, and I always like look at what they say with a grain of salt because like sometimes the AI is wrong, right, or it gives advice that like okay that's not really relevant, but I do use it to help with my own renewing and refreshing, right? Both before and after, and say like psych me up and tell me like how this meeting might go, and then afterwards like how can I do better to avoid the drift. And so like Jes-AI, like is it software or like how does it integrate?
yeah. So it's Jes-AI is a really cool thing we developed over time. So essentially, our clients are sales companies, and they sell uh, air conditioning products. That's why I was in the Middle East for so many years. I'm a mechanical engineer, sell essentially an air
And
conditioning
it's
system.
hot there. They need to get cooled
It's
down.
hot. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Good place to be to sell air conditioning. Particularly, I was in Dubai for about 8 years too, so that was awesome. There's a lot to do there, but um, now I lost my train of thought. Sorry, so sorry about that. Where was I
So
going?
that the salespeople use this tool
Oh
in
yeah,
HVAC.
Just AI. Sorry about that. So our clients are salespeople, our sales companies. So we ask them to, and then we do this in a way in a Microsoft environment, in a Microsoft tenant, so that it stays in their environment. None of this is shared. So Just AI, while we use an LLM, that LLM does not share information outside with outside companies. So we ask them to put their proposals in there, their submittals, their invoices, and all that stuff in there. We anonymize it, and we to the degree that's important, we take out the most important stuff. So we say, look, uh, when you're working with Smith and Anderson Consulting, you have a really good chance of getting specified when you quote when you quote the following stuff. So, we've won 8 out of 10 when we've quoted this kind of stuff, and when we've quoted this, we haven't won. And in the South region, by the way, we're really doing well with hospitals, and we want to, in the last 6 months, we've won a great share of those. On the other side, we just got a request for quote from ABC contractors. ABC contractors have given us 8 requests for quotes and 0 business. So don't spend a lot of time on it. If it's a tough thing, don't even do it. And then perhaps set up a call with ABC. So what it does is it looks at the history, and it then gives you recommendations based on that history. And that's basic. That's really one of the fundamental the fundamental ideas behind Just AI. The other one is that we create playbooks, and the playbooks are per customer. So say for example, Riverside Studio is one of our customers, and we know with Riverside we've got to work with Jay Smith because Jay's really awesome, and there's 3 or 4 people there, and if we can defer and talk to Jay in a meeting, we've worked with him before and he's really great. So part of what we call tribal knowledge is just relationships. Who do we know? And when we work with this person or this company, things get done. And that's internally too. So if we're working on, for example, a data center project in our company, let's say we've got 20 engineers in our company, who in our company really knows data centers, and who should I talk to about the new design? So that's kind of what we're focusing on.
Well, very cool. And it's very much needed, right? To know like what to optimize for. And you talk to this company and like you say, like what's the likelihood of success and how hard should I try or how
Yeah,
less or like which person to focus on and like connecting those dots. And I feel like in a lot of what I do, I feel like the missing piece for me is like the big bunch of the big blobs of text in the CRM that the AI can just go and like pick out the nuggets, right? Because like the CRMs,
yep,
they have like these fields, but I'm just like, I wish I could just load up like, 10 markdown files just for Bruce. So that way I can just like either query Bruce specifically or query the whole thing or query the company and just have it like dial down and pull out those insights that we wouldn't notice or would take us like an hour of digging around, and the AI can just pull it out in a few seconds because we definitely can't keep it all in our head. And before AI, there was like that disconnect, right? It's like all the information is there. How do we dig through it? And I'm
yep.
curious, I know that you have some thoughts about things like succession plans, SOPs, knowledge bases. So I'm curious just about like, as far as like the documentation process and like perhaps AI assisted, like where does it go wrong and where does it go right as far as just like, having these insights, but also have a company that can still survive maybe if those key people like move on.
Yeah, that's a great topic. That's kind of where I got started with this whole idea. One of the places, and that is, I worked as a consultant before, management consultant, in between engineering gigs. So, I got as right out of school, I did engineering in the Middle East, and I kind of got tired of that. And then I went back, did a graduate degree, and then I did some management consulting. And I would find that when they'd set up mentoring programs, they were just nonsense. They were just BS. You talk to the mentor and the guy's like, yeah, I take the guy for lunch. And honestly, it's a waste of time. I don't know what to do. There's no documentation. There's no training. It's kind of like a burden, whereas what I talk about in the book is really the craftsman knowledge, this craftsmanship idea, the idea of the craft, the master, the journeyman, and the apprentice, and that in that model, which evolves really beautifully, naturally in human evolution, it it created these guilds, and a guild was about 150 people, out of there's a thing called the Dunbar number. A guy named Robin Dunbar, the evolutionary and anthropologist, determined that the maximum size of a group of people that really can connect is about 150 people. So we said, look, in a company, you should have a maximum 150 people in a group. That group should have a group of sort of elders, whatever you would call them, and those elders then coach the next generation. And you save that coaching and we save it in AI. We do it using, we transcribe conversations and we pick out the nuggets, and AI picks out the nuggets, what really resonated. We have the mentor look at the transcription and say, that really worked when I said that. And, that was really true for me. And it's usually pretty basic stuff, but makes a huge difference. So I know I said a lot of things there, but it's really about a structured process for the mentor, the craftsman, and then how that craftsman deals with the next generation, and that's really about training. We like in my experience. So in the sales engineering business, there's about, if you have 20 sales engineers, there's 3 or 4 that kind of know everything in the office, and everybody goes to them. And they've been there for 20 years or 30 years, but they're going to leave soon. And when they leave, that information, that knowledge walks out the door. And that knowledge is, okay, who do I talk to at ABC Engineering to get something done? What do I do when I'm confronted with a spec that's been declined by, the city of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee's specification? Talk to Bill. Bill's been doing that kind of stuff for years. And then, so what you want to do is you start capturing that in AI and updating that. So when a young engineer comes in, he said, "Oh, listen, I'm doing a new spec for the new stadium in Memphis, but we got to pass state code on this thing. Who do I talk to? It's like state code is like an inch thick. What should I do?" And talk to Bill. Bill has done this a million times, and then that. So that's the other kind of process we use.
Very cool. I'm forever fascinated with the idea that the more complex it gets, the more there's the need for that simplicity, and that if we have those key people in that organization, and maybe like so much has just become intuitive for them, and with AI we can like get the bare essentials figured out again and revisited it, and it is easy because, like you say, there's that Dunbar number, and it applies in so many ways, right? Like there's the groups of 150, and we can only really even hold in our head like 150 people, and there's just like limitations to what exists in our head, and our memories play games with us. So all the more reason to have things written down and revisit the simplicity in all these forms that it takes, right? You say there's the master, journeyman, apprenticeship factor, and like passing on the knowledge and like revisiting the basics. And I think it's so important. And so we've jumped around all kinds of fun, interesting concepts in our conversation here, Mr. Bruce, but I want to make sure in these final few minutes that we focus on what's important to you, right? We've talked about HVAC, AI, Jes-AI, the digital bell, so many things. But in this conversation we're having, do you think there might be a missing question that I should be asking you? I just don't know to ask you.
Yeah, you know what? I don't talk about it very often, but for me, there was a big turning point. I was a pretty successful executive, and I broke a bone in my back. So I had back surgery as a kid. I had some spinal issues. Nothing major. I was a pretty good athlete, but I had what's called a spinal fusion when I was like 25. And then when I was 50, I broke that. So then I had a spinal cord injury. Now I have a spinal cord injury, but I can still walk, and I can't run very well, but I can walk pretty well. Don't really notice it, but it was about a year after the surgery that really screwed me up. So what screwed me up was opioid medication. I got an opioid medication, and you want to talk about automatic and adrift and just being in a haze and realizing that you can just drift. And I got some help. So I went to a treatment center. I was not an opioid. I was actually addicted to a pain and anxiety medication. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because then I got into a routine of connecting with somebody on a regular basis at a regular time and talking about it and just walking through what really I'm committed to as a person. And, the back still hurt, and I really wanted pain meds. It was like a significant, it was actually 4 operations that I had over a period of a year. And after an operation, it really hurts. So I just learned so much about myself and how easy it is to sort of go and just say, look, I just want to zone out here. I want to get away from it, as opposed to being connected to something that's really important to me. And I started to use AI, and I started to use, I used to love reading these books, and I'd have insights, and then the insights would go away. I forget the insights. but AI helped me track the insight and, hey, how am I being consistent with this insight? So I don't talk about that very often. And, it's been like 15 years now, and I'm like as strong as can be. I exercise a lot, I lift weights, and I don't take any pain meds. So I think I hope that was an answer to your question.
Well, yeah, I think that connected a lot of the dots in what we're talking about, the value of checking in as so-called boring and mundane as a routine, a schedule might be. There is value in that, right? And checking in
Yeah.
with your team and your mentor and
Yeah.
journaling and recording your insights, because like it seems like the theme of what you and I are speaking about here is like drift is a real thing, and maybe the overinflated ego says, "Oh, I'll remember all of it." No, you won't. You'll get distracted 2 seconds later by something else, and your brain just won't. Your conscious just won't be able to fit it all in there.
Yeah.
And isolation for sure is a real danger. And you discover that in your your opioid sobriety, etc. journey. And just there's value in other people and collecting and meeting the minds. And AI is the best mind, right? And it itself is not sentient, even though it feels like it. And like what you get out of it is what you put in. So why not put in some good stuff in whatever form that takes, right? You mentioned a few times there about you open social media and it's a nice escape, but it's kind of just like forcing things on you, right? You're bored, and that feed just says like, hey, here's some entertainment,
Yeah.
and it's like kind of useless versus you researching, learning, revisiting, reading some book, getting some insight, sharing with others, using Jes-AI to document, and then getting something worthwhile out of it that then helps
Yeah.
others. That seems to be what it's all about, right? It's AI like anything else. It's a tool. Like you can use a hammer for good or for bad, a car for good or for bad. So why not put it to great use and document and improve your organization? And so you've been talking about so many amazing things like the digital bell and Jes-AI. So if someone says, I've got to find out more about this Dr. Bruce Dorey guy and his offerings, so who is the right person for you? And if they're that right person, where should they go?
Oh boy. So anybody that really is committed to doing something with their life. I know this sounds trite, but it's true. Like you're really committed to something. You've tried a lot of things. You like a lot of things. Like you get insights. Those insights seem to float away. You know that you're drifting, and so you can you my website is brdorey brdorey.com, and I offer a couple of different programs to get kind of get cleansed, I guess, of social media. But I don't think social media is a bad thing. I just think being addicted to social media is a bad thing. I think I'm not like uh, what is his name? Newport, the professor at Georgetown, that's like, you should not do social media. No, social media is great. I love watching videos and stuff, but don't let that drive you. So brdorey.com, check it out, send me a message or whatever, and then, so I have a couple of different ways of working with people.
Well, nice. So brdorey.com is the hub for that. BRDOREY. And that's Cal Newport that we were mentioning, right?
Yeah.
That deep work.
He's awesome. He's great, but I just don't prescribe to this idea of zero social media. I think I like social media. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's there, and it's a personal choice of, do you let it take it over, or it's great for networking, right? Like LinkedIn and cold email. That's how guys like you and I meet all the time, and then we then share it out. So it's like a tool that you use like any other. So BRDOREY is how you can get these AI insights and find out about Lift, Passing the Craft, which is one of your books, and then the Digital Bell, which is your other book, and then Jes-AI. So if you fit the profile, if you are one of these organizations that say, well, I'm worried about these key people retiring or leaving, I want to preserve the knowledge, then check out Jes-AI and Bruce's other insights, which you can find at brdorey.com. Dorey, and just see what he's up to, especially using the AI race to save human expertise, new ways to work, and so much more. brdorey.com. And before I let you go, Mr. Bruce Dorey, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you, I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun or interesting quote or lesson that has worked for you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun or interesting quote or lesson?
Oh boy, this is stumping me. Let's see. Oh boy, I wish I had something clever.
No,
but I think the Dunbar. I think how about the Dunbar number?
Base. Oh,
yeah. I really think that this idea that anthropologists have this guy Robin Dunbar is an evolutionary anthropologist. He determined using cranial size and weight that the 150 number is the right number, and this was developed consistent with guild size. So they found out in England when they were doing guilds for particularly woodworking and crafts and joinery and stuff, that when it got more than I go into this in the book. When you go more than that, it kind of gets unruly and people get a little bit surly and they do their own thing. But 150 is a good number. So how's that?
It sounds great. And it reminds me of politics for some reason, right? Like when the groups get too big, right? If Congress gets too big, there's different groups. Or like I'm in the state of California, 40 million people, and it's really like 5 states in one. So it definitely reveals itself in nature quite a bit. When the groups become too large, then they get naturally clustered in other cells. And so we can either fight that or say, hey, this is this kind of scientific principle that keeps revealing itself. So let's keep that in mind as we're getting people on board with our ideas, making decisions, sharing knowledge, and so much more. So you can find out more at brdorey.com. You'll be glad you did. You'll get some insights, especially when it comes to mentoring that next generation for success. So check out those coaching and AI insights from Bruce Dorey. And thanks so much, Mr. Bruce, for showing up, stopping by, and being quite a helpful, valuable insight and resource. I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.